played that game and it's really hard.
So good at everything. I don't know this.
Well, that was eventful. Okay, so we played the game, and I don't know what it's called. To be honest, when I was doing my stuff for this, I looked up a game and I said, Youth Games Upside Down, and that's what I got. But it worked really well, I have to say. So let's kind of breathe, zone back in. Every day when we get out of bed, we make the decision to follow Jesus, or at least I hope that's the decision that you make. And every day when we get up and we make that decision to follow Jesus, we head out into a world that doesn't want to hear about Jesus, that doesn't understand Jesus, that doesn't know what we're talking about, that thinks we're weird and crazy when we talk about Jesus. Every day is a battle when it comes to fighting the world for Jesus. Much like this battle that just went on here. Did you guys, I don't know, run into each other?
Yes.
Did you have some struggles because you were going two different directions?
I'm still struggling.
Well, I didn't plan it this way because I was trying to figure out which team was going to win because, it'd be kind of, if the upside down won, then it would go with the thing. But that didn't happen, but we'll just pretend because you guys didn't win. But the right side up cups won. But it was hard, right? It wasn't an easy victory. It took you guys some sweat. It took you some running into each other. It took you fighting. Did you have to fight to get your cups back up sometimes? Because when I played it with Olivia, and it was just two of us, and so we would switch and switch and switch. So it wasn't as hard as when there's multiple people fighting you to flip those cups upside down. Just like in our game, there are always obstacles trying to flip the truth back over. Does it seem like sometimes, maybe, when you come to church, you hear something that's in the Bible, and then if you think about it, it's kind of the opposite of what you hear when you are outside of church? I know that happens a lot to me. There are a lot of things that I've been taught and that I practice in my own life and that I read in the Bible that are wrong in the world. And that's something that Jesus' disciples dealt with every single day. So I've been reading Acts, for example. And Acts happens after Jesus has died. And his disciples are sent out to continue their work to preach Jesus. But Jesus isn't there anymore, so it's a little bit harder for them. There were disciples like Stephen. Who's heard of the disciple Stephen? Stephen was killed for preaching the gospel of Jesus. He was stoned to death. There were disciples like Paul, who, we talked about this with Silas, were thrown into prison multiple times, beaten for telling people about Jesus. But in all of these people that we've talked about, did any of them ever stop telling people about Jesus? No. These people never stopped telling the world about Jesus because he had done something so spectacular for them that they couldn't help but continue with what he told them to do. These disciples were tasked with turning the world upside down, as I like to call it, changing the world's minds, changing lives for Jesus. But Jesus had already turned their lives upside down. And that's what we're missing. It's hard to go out and shake things up when you're the same, right? It's hard to tell someone you should change when you don't change. These disciples, if you read about their lives, they changed. And they didn't just change, they flipped completely upside down. Let's talk about Paul. Who was Paul before he was Paul? Saul. Remember Stephen that we talked about? When Paul was a young man, he was at Stephen's murder, Stephen's stoning. He was holding the coats of the people that stoned Stephen. He was raised to hate Christians. In fact, he killed a lot of Christians. So I would say that Saul turning into Paul, who won so many people to Jesus, his life completely turned upside down. Now, think about this for a second. What do you think would happen if you went to your house right now, think about your house, and you could pick up your house and turn the whole thing upside down? Physically turn it upside down. Would things change in your house if you turned the entire thing upside down? Unless you have glued everything to the walls and to the floor, things are going to change. Things will be broken and changed, and most of that change is irreversible. Sometimes when you break something, you can't ever put it back together the way it was. When Jesus comes into your life and you allow him to flip everything upside down, there's no going back. And I think that's the reason that we don't hold on to church and hold on to Jesus, because we don't let him flip us completely upside down. If you flipped your house upside down, it'd be pretty hard to flip it back and everything be exactly the same. Yet, how many times do we come here? How many times do we say, this time I'm going to follow Jesus, and nothing changes? And we stop trying. When Jesus changes your life, you can't change it back. No matter how hard you try, you can't change it back. You can say you don't want to follow Jesus anymore, and you don't have to. That's your choice. But you can't forget what Jesus does for you. And once you have Jesus and you feel what he can do for your heart and for your life, and you see what he can do for yourself, for the people around you, how he makes you a better person, how he gives you a purpose, when you decide you don't want that anymore, you remember what that felt like. You don't forget. You can't go back to not knowing once you know it. When Jesus comes into your life and changes it so radically, you don't want it to go back to the way it was before. Sometimes things happen, and sometimes we question what God is doing in our lives, what we're supposed to be doing. Sometimes we go through things and we want to stop trying. But there's a difference in being tired and in giving up. Because, yeah, we can give up on Jesus, but the problem for us is that Jesus doesn't give up on us. So you can give up and you can say you're done, but you're never going to get rid of that feeling. You're never going to get rid of that thought that creeps into your head that says, maybe I should go to church today. Maybe I should pray. Because Jesus is never going to stop trying to get you back. Because he wants you to be living the life that he made for you. We are called to turn the world upside down, but we have to do the same thing to ourselves. Honestly, when I started writing this, I didn't think, it's weird. Whenever I start trying to think about what I'm going to talk about, I never know where it's going to end up. I just have an idea, and then I start typing things, and then whenever I thought of it like in a physical way, and thinking about turning your house upside down, I remember that growing up, I was always taught that your body is a temple. Jesus lives in your heart. And when I was little, I didn't understand that. I thought Jesus was literally living inside of my heart, that he had a little room in there or something. But honestly, when you think about it in ways like that, it makes somehow more sense. When you think about it, you can't, if you break a vase or if you break anything glass, really, you can glue it back together all you want, but it's never going to be the same. It's going to have little pieces missing. It's going to have chips and, it's going to have flaws. It's going to have problems. So when Jesus comes into our lives and he changes them so drastically that things break and things disintegrate and things are gone, we're not supposed to put them back together. That's not our job. When Jesus comes into your life and he breaks something and he changes something in you, that's when you rely on him to fix it. Or maybe not fix it, maybe change it into something else. Maybe you weren't meant to be a vase, maybe you're meant to be a bowl, and he's going to change you into a bowl instead. But you can't do that. I could never do that. I can take some broken pieces of glass and make something else. But Jesus can. He can take the worst parts of you and make them into something good. That's what he does all the time. And the only problem is our own ideas, our own mind. We think we can do it. So we don't let him flip us upside down. We don't let him break things inside of us and change things inside of us. We let him a little bit in, and then we say, okay, I got it from here, thanks, I have some really good ideas, and then we run away. It's not an easy decision to say, yeah, completely change everything in my life. Completely change who I am. That's probably the scariest thing to think about for me. Because you spend your whole life trying to be something and then you say, okay, well, it's out of my hands, you take it. That's not easy, and it's not supposed to be easy. But we are called to reach people. We're called to tell them about Jesus and tell them that there's a way that they can have a purpose in their life, that they can be something. That they don't have to turn to all these things that are happening in the world that the Bible tells us are wrong. It's our job to let Jesus in to our lives, to change us so that we can go out and show other people what they're missing. Because if you're changed so drastically that you can't go back, someone's going to notice that. Someone's going to notice that, and you have that as a witness to say, yeah, I used to be this way, but let me tell you about Jesus. So, last thing I want to say, and I'll be done for today, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about what it means to turn the world upside down. What it means to be changed and what it means to lead others to be changed. Because the greatest thing that you guys can do is to decide to follow Jesus and to decide to follow what he wants you to be. That's the greatest thing you can do. And I'm not going to stop talking about it until you understand that. Because if you understood it, I would have you guys, someone up here every week saying, I want to follow Jesus. That's okay. We're going to talk about it to death. So you guys are going to learn about it. And I just want to thank you guys for being faithful, for being here every week. There are some people in our youth group that come and go sometimes, but there are some of you guys that are here every single week, and I want to thank you for that. Because that's a great thing to be, is faithful. So, all right, that's all I have for you guys for tonight.